Okay, well, the last people it looks like are getting their lunch. I wanted to welcome you all to the third edition of our Innovation and Entrepreneurship Speaker Series here at PCI. I'm Laurie Achtman, I'm the COO with the Penn Center for Innovation. We're really delighted to have you all here today to discuss a topic that we find is of high interest and one of the most frequently asked questions here at Penn. Before I get started, I just wanted to highlight a few things for you, which you see on these rotating slides. One is that we recently won an I-Corps grant from the National Science Foundation, which we're really excited about. This will enable us to basically launch an accelerator here at Penn and graduate 30 interdisciplinary teams of faculty, students, and entrepreneurs a year for the next 3 years. We're having a launch event February 24th at World Cafe Live, where you can learn more about the program and also kind of get into our queue of folks interested. And we're hoping to create some teams, or you may come with a team or be looking for a team. But it's a great way to work with us and kind of learn the commercialization process, and hopefully we'll be able to launch some new technologies into the market. So just a brief commercial for that. We also have flyers here on the table. I also just wanted to highlight, we have a number of upcoming events this month, and these are all listed on our website, but hope to see you at those. And finally, we'll be doing this again in March, and I think we have a great lineup for that version of this, with Barbara Schilberg from BioAdvance talking about kind of some of the innovative technology development she sees from the market, and Amanda Christini from the Center for Healthcare Innovation here at Penn. And so with that, I'm really pleased to bring you, I think, two excellent speakers to give you, the perspective from the university on how to do a startup at Penn, and the perspective from a VC who works closely with Penn and universities across the country funding early stage technology. So Michael Quazell, who's the head of our PCI Ventures group, he's actually been with PCI for the past 6 years and has really done an incredible job expanding and launching this program here at Penn. Previously to joining Penn, he spent 10 years in venture capital himself at New Spring Capital, and is also a product of Penn with graduate degrees from both the School of Engineering and an MBA. So we'll have Michael come up first. And our guest after Michael will be Mark Singer from Osage Ventures. Osage University Partners. Mark is also a product of Penn. He is an undergraduate from Wharton, and he's been in the venture capital industry for almost 25 years and has helped grow Osage into a major force in early stage investing across the country. So I'm excited to have him here as well. So what we'll do is first we'll bring up Michael, then we'll have Mark come up, and after that, moderated questions for the rest of the time. So Michael.
Thanks everybody for coming today. I just have a few slides. I'd rather have an interactive conversation, so I'll try to go through my talk quickly. But I want everybody to understand where we're coming from with PCI Ventures. The PCI in our new incarnation from before, has always been the method for commercializing technology at Penn. And for many years, it was basically a matter of just us trying to license technology developed by all the amazing research that goes on here. With me coming on board, we started to develop new programs and new ways to access all of the capital that's out there for companies. It opens up a whole new avenue for us to help translate our research from the basic research beginning stage ideas all the way up to something that can look more like a commercial product. And our goal is to help along those ways. This doesn't replace the licensing function. We just hope that it supplements it and provides more access to everyone here for additional capital. We look at it from our standpoint that there are multiple ways to be able to go after starting a company. And I wanted to start with first to make sure everybody understands that working with PCI Ventures is completely voluntary. Working with PCI in terms of licensing technology, there's patent policy and all the other policies that mandate that. Working with us is voluntary, and anybody here is perfectly willing to start their own company on their own. They don't have to use us, they don't have to work with us. When doing something like that, you basically are starting it individually outside of Penn around technology, and what you would have to do then is to come back to Penn for a license to the technology as part of the company operations. The first program that I'll talk about that we have here at Penn is something that we've developed, and it's fairly recent. We haven't advertised it a lot so far. But it's a way for individuals that feel they're confident about their abilities to start a company. Maybe they've done it before, maybe they have a relationship with people that want to help them to do it, and so maybe they don't need a lot of help to do it, but they'd like a little bit, they'd like some direction. So we've developed something that we call Up Advisors, where we have a starter kit for people and how to start your company, and we have a manual that walks them through every step of the process. So we can tell you exactly how you need to get the company going, we just don't do it for you. So we'll be there for you, we'll answer questions, we'll have a limited amount of office hours, but it's mainly a self-starter kit. You've been interested to do it, you just don't know the finer details, what are the steps you have to go through, we can help with that. And then additionally, then in that process, not only help with paperwork, helping get you started, we will also help you in terms of getting the license put together as well. And there won't be any equity as part of the license. We'll get 10% of the company in the formation of the company. The last one, and where I'll spend my most time, is what I've been working on for the last 5 years, and that's Upstart. Upstart is a way for us to collaborate with faculty and work in partnership. There's a lot of faculty here, and when I came here, there's the impression out in the marketplace that researchers are happy doing their basic research, and that's all they want to do, and they just focus on that cycle. And we think there's so much more, and in my time here, I've come to know so many faculty here that want to see more, want to do more with their technology, want to see it commercialized. And they like the idea and the concept of starting a company. They just don't expect that they'll ever do it themselves. And from my standpoint, I would like to jump in and help them to get that going. We want to do the work with you. We want to be your partner in helping you to build that enterprise. And this has turned out to be extremely popular amongst the faculty and staff at Penn. And I want to keep that going and build upon that. And we've continued to build so many additional services to go in. How it basically works is that we work with enthusiastic faculty members. Basically, that's our only requirement for joining the program, is that you understand that there's a time commitment and that you want to work with us, and you come to us and say, this is something I want to do, I'd love to start a company, can you help? So we started Delaware LLC, and it's structured as 51% for the inventors and 49% for Penn. We then go about doing the work to build a business. So the first step is finding an entrepreneur to run the company. We take that on. We have a Rolodex now, after 5 years of doing this, of potential entrepreneurs that we can plug into the businesses. We work very hard in continually updating that network and finding more and more candidates and people who want to work with you to build a business. Once we have them on board, we help to develop all of the plans for the business. We don't really think in terms of business plans. Most of the time they end up being wrong, and they're long, and hardly anybody reads them. But we got to know where we're going. So we help you to build a plan for the business. Once we have that plan in place, we work on fundraising. We have lots of different ways. The money generally, here, we don't fund the companies from Penn. So we have to look outside, and we look at commercialization grants, economic development money, early stage VCs, angels, corporate partners, and even charitable foundations are all potential accesses for the money. Once it looks like we're going to get the company funded, we have service providers that will jump in and help set up the company in terms of doing payroll, bookkeeping, insurance, and benefits. We can do all that. We have legal documents in template form, so there's not a lot of need for attorneys to get involved, which saves our companies significant amounts of money. So we have lots of different mechanisms we can go, and I'll just put up a slide of the different services I've been talking about. So as I talk about the management team recruitment, the fundraising strategies, and I should mention we're about to launch a new one that we call Jolt Funding, which is to help our companies look for money from online angels. So there's a lot of these online marketplaces being set up, and it's actually quite a process to be able to put a campaign up on one of these online marketplaces, and we're developing a program to be able to help with that, and we're going to be launching that at the end of the month. In terms of the grant commercialization assistance, we have a program called Up the Odds, where we get involved and help to do everything you need to get an SBIR and its TTR application put together for the company. Those are small grants on the front end of $150,000 to $200,000, but in phase 2 they can be $1 million to $1.5 million, which can really start to be great startup seed capital for a company business. And I mentioned the Template Legal Library. The other thing we have is the vendor relationships, helping to get the company going. Market analysis that we do through Wharton. So in building this program, we're engaging a lot of the schools around campus. Wharton's been a great partner through us. They do 5 market assessment projects for us a semester, where their students get in and do primary research, where they're going out and talking to doctors and physicians about the market need for what you want to offer. We have help from the Legal Law Clinic. They do IP strategy for us. It's not an assumption that the IP strategy of Penn is going to match what the company wants to do. And so we help our companies develop their own idea of where they want to go with their intellectual property that they're going to license. And then we work with the School of Design. We have design students that are designing incredibly professional logos and websites for the companies, which really gives us a leg up. It makes our companies look a lot bigger and a lot more developed. And then lastly, we have a huge number of students that work with us as interns. And what they do is work directly in the companies and helping the companies to move forward. It's a great resource. They get a lot of education out of it. The company gets a free intern to work with. So in terms of where we've been over the last 5 years, we've now developed 60 companies. Of those, we have 24 companies that are funded and operational. We have another 20 or so that have entrepreneurs on board, but they're looking for that first round of funding. And we have 48 total that have engaged management teams. So we have about 12 right now that need managers. We're on a pace that we start about 2 companies a month. So this has been incredibly consistent and an incredible demand that we've had over the last 5 years. Very oddly linear in its fashion, that it continues to build on itself. And our companies have raised $27 million to date, which is all very positive. Of the companies, 70% of them are in the life sciences space, broadly defined, and then 30% are spread out through the rest of the campus, from education to nursing to engineering, materials, robotics, a lot of different other companies. Obviously do a lot here. I think that's it. I have 2 slides up here, and I know it's wordy, so I'm not going to go through it, but if you have questions afterwards about what are the differences between the 3 options I put up, we have 2 charts, and we're happy to distribute them so you can see those. The last thing I'll talk about is PitUp. It's another program that we run for people that have ideas for applications to put on smartphones. We've been doing this for the last 2 years. This past year, we started in November. We received 450 ideas from around campus, faculty, students, staff. And we took those 450 ideas and gave them to 25 venture capitalists. The 25 venture capitalists picked what they thought were the 10 best ideas. Very interestingly, we saw a lot of venture capital bias in the ideas, because they picked 7 out of the 10 were healthcare IT, and 5 out of the 10 had a wearable component. So definitely you can see where they think the world is headed in terms of the ideas they chose. We take those 10 and we've engaged 5 professional development firms that have offered to build a prototype application based on the idea. And so basically the winning prize out of this is that 5 out of the submissions get to see their app turned into reality. And we're going through that now for the second time, and we're going to be picking, at our demo day, we'll be picking one winner, and that winner will get a $50,000 investment from Ben Franklin here locally. So they'll be launched with a product prototype and some funding, and they'll be really ready to go. A great example of this is the winner from last year was a staff member who had a son with a severe nut allergy, and he wanted an application that could help his son in case he didn't have an EpiPen. So he's always got his phone, but he may not have the EpiPen. He's 7 years old. And so we developed an application that it's a company now called RescueFi, where his son can push one button on the phone and it will call 911, it will text 911, all his medical information. It will tell his parents, it will tell his teachers, anybody else you put into the phone that he's having an incident. And it will geolocate him for emergency staff so that they can get to him. This has turned out to be incredibly popular. We're in conversations with the maker of EpiPen, with several of the drugstore chains, and very strategic conversations. So that it's a neat way that we can help develop something. It has a real need and can turn somebody's dream into reality, which we think is really cool. So I know I've talked very fast. I wanted to get through the slides quickly, leave time for Mark. If anybody has any questions, you can always find me at PCI Ventures, and I'm welcome to answer any questions for the rest of the time once Mark's done.
Yeah, great. Mark, why don't we have you come up, and then we'll do some moderated Q&A.
Thanks, Lori, for having me here, and it's a pleasure to follow Michael. So I'm Mark Singer. I'm a partner at Osage University Partners. We're a venture capital firm that invests in university spinouts. That's all we do. And we started the firm back in 2009 on the premise that if we could partner with universities that create a lot of spinouts, we could create unique investment opportunities for us through those partnerships, and the universities could share in our profit. And Penn very much took a gamble on us back in 2009. So Penn was one of 5 universities that we initially partnered with. The other 5 included Caltech, Yale, Florida, and Duke. And we've since grown the business where we now have 70 universities that we partner with. And so what we do is we invest in their spinouts. So we've invested in 3 Penn spinouts so far. We're closing on a 4th. And in general, we're investing in companies that have cutting-edge technologies across lots of different sectors. Our portfolio is a little bit more than half life science, and the other half are physical science, and I'll walk you through that a little bit. And we're investing in all different stages of these companies. So one of the things we aspire to do is hopefully be students of university spinouts and what works and what doesn't, and what's applicable for venture funding and what's not, and I'll try to talk through some of that. So what we do, again, is we partner with universities. You can see some of the universities on the left side. That's a small, they're hard to see the logos. I'll talk you through some of them in a second. And then we're generally investing in venture capital rounds of these companies. So we're sitting in between universities on one side and then venture capitalists on the other. So you can see on the right side, these are logos of venture capitalists. So we're generally investing alongside some of the top venture capital firms in the world. We now have about $300 million of capital under management. We invested our first fund. We invested in about 40 companies. We've just raised our second fund, which is twice the size of the first one, and so we're continuing to grow. So you can see here, so basically in about 5 years, we have partnered with universities that represent half of all research funding in the US. So, and I think it's less a comment on us and more a comment on the fact that we're filling a need in the market, which is being a bridge between universities and their startups and on one side and the venture capital world on the other side. And we've partnered with 20 of the top 30 universities as measured by their research dollars. So on this slide, the ones in bold are our partners. The ones in light gray are not our partners. You'll see Penn on the list in number 11. But it's also the case that research funding does not always correlate to startup success. There are some universities that are not on this list that are incredible at creating startups, and there's some universities that are on this list that aren't incredible. And so much of the variance depends first on what the university invests in its own startup ecosystem. So Penn, through PCI, through Michael's efforts and John's and everyone, Lori and everyone else here, is investing a lot in its startups. And if you were to index Penn against this group, Penn is kind of off the charts in terms of what it's investing in its startups to help get them going, to help find management teams, and help get them funding. Some universities happen to be in a great ecosystem where they don't need that, where it happens automatically without the university even trying. We're all here in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is not quite there yet. I think Philadelphia will get there. I think we're 5 to 10 years away from that being a little bit more automatic in Philly. And so as a result, there's a real role and a need here for somebody like PCI to help create new startups and really push them down the path. So this just gives you a sense of our portfolio, to have a sense of the range of things we're investing in. And I've put this up less to talk about Osage, to give you a sense of where's the venture world investing as it relates to university spinouts. There's a lot of the venture capital world that doesn't invest in university spinouts at all. They're investing in consumer internet businesses or software companies. So there's a subset of the venture world that are interested in these kinds of companies. If you look at our portfolio, we're a little bit less than half tech on the left side, and the other half is life science. On the tech side, there are basically 3 main categories we are focused on. One is IT, that generally includes software opportunities, network security, robotics. That has been a really active and growing area for venture capital, an active and growing area among university spinouts. So we're seeing more and more activity today, and about 75% of our investing in the last couple of years has largely been in that category. In addition, we invest in materials and semiconductors, and then finally in clean tech and energy. And then on the life science side, most of our life science portfolio are therapeutics companies, with the largest concentration in oncology. We have done some work in diagnostics. We were an investor in a Penn diagnostic spin-out called Abbott, radiopharmaceuticals. We also do some investing in devices. But most of our investments on the life science side, and most of the venture world's investments on the life science side, are in therapeutics companies. And if you look at the stage those companies are getting funding in, it generally, from venture firms, it generally starts about a year before the clinic or so, and then moves. So you're about a year from an IND, and then kind of in all the various stages of clinical trials. We also invest in a lot of different stages. I won't go through this, but again, a little bit more about half our portfolio is early, a little bit less than half is late stage. Because if you look at Penn's portfolio, it has companies that spun out 6 years ago, and it has companies that are spinning out right now. We're investing in companies that are all across that spectrum. So this represents, it gets the title, OUP investment criteria. This is an internal slide that we share with our investors. So I didn't put this up for you about what we're looking for when we are funding a deal. And so I won't go through all of these, but I'll call out a few. The first one is that we really are investing in companies that are based on breakthrough science. So kind of radical new science that generally opens up a really big market opportunity. And oftentimes, not always, oftentimes the scientists themselves working on it have been involved in startups before. So for all of you in the audience, if this is your first startup, that's a daunting task. And one of the things we see a lot of are faculty teaming up with other faculty members who have startup experience. So there is kind of a sense of how to do this and people around who have done it before. Every once in a while, we will invest in what I'll call a niche technology, where we think something is a smaller market opportunity, it requires less dollars, and that's about 20% of what we do, and about 80% of what we do are what we think are kind of swing for the fences opportunities, really big radical science that can create really big companies. I'll kind of talk about number 3 for a second, but I'll talk a little bit about management. So you've probably heard this before if you've ever heard anyone talk about venture capital and startups. From our standpoint, management is everything. It is fundamentally more important than the scientific discovery itself, but you need both. And in most of the cases that we are funding companies, there is a partnership between kind of faculty and outside management, and that partnership is really critical, and I'll talk about that a little bit. And then the last thing is number 4, that this addresses a large market opportunity. This is one of the hardest things to do in the startup world and in our world, which is to say, how big an opportunity is this if I'm successful? It's a little bit easier in drug development in certain areas where you know kind of the prevalence of a certain disease, and you can look at comparable drugs. But outside of the biotech world, this is really, really hard. And as you're thinking about crafting a startup, you've got to think about, is this a small opportunity, a medium opportunity, a large opportunity? You can be successful all the way through. In any of those, we're generally focused on kind of medium and large opportunities, but really having a deep understanding of what that is, how do you feel confident it is a big opportunity is important for us when we're investing in companies. So this talks about what a venture capital firm does on a day-to-day basis. If you've ever talked to a venture capital firm or know people who have not successfully raised money from venture firms, they may say it's been a frustrating experience. And it can be a frustrating experience. And the reason why is venture firms are approached by lots and lots of businesses and fund very few. And so the process of figuring out what to invest in takes time from a venture firm standpoint, and it takes an entrepreneur time to get them up to speed. So that process can be a great learning experience, and if it results in success, it's a wonderful experience. But sometimes it can be frustrating along the way. So we always kind of like to talk about that dynamic. We at Osage try to be careful about how we do that, so we're not taking much of an entrepreneur's time unless we're really deeply engaged. But in general, we at Osage, we invest in 8 to 10 companies a year, and depending on how you measure it, we look at probably about 1,000 opportunities every year. So it really is a highly selective process. Once a venture firm invests in a company, they then become a partner in that company. They'll own equity, they'll have a seat on the board, and then they'll in some sense try to continue doing the kinds of work that Michael described, that PCI does in terms of building out the management team, getting future funding, setting strategy. So one of the important things to think about if you're ever talking to investors, whether it's venture firms or other investors, is what's that partnership going to be like? And is this person really going to help my company? It's really, really critical. So I want to spend a second building on something that Michael talked about, which is what are the sources of funding for a startup beyond venture capital? Venture capital is only one component of the funding chain for startups. And it's not right for every startup at all. And if you look at our data of university spinouts, about 18% of university spinouts raise venture funds, and then about another 17% or so raise angel funds or other kind of similar type of funds. So it's not for everybody. So this goes from kind of early to late stage in terms of funding sources. So at the earliest level, when something is early in a science project, then you're focused on grants. I assume a lot of you know how to do that, and again, PCI helps with a lot of that process. And then as you get beyond grants, you wind up in kind of the early stage funding level, which are everything from friends and family through angels and incubators. This is a world, as Michael commented on, that has greatly professionalized and changed over the last 5 years. So going after this world today is different than it used to be. It used to be you literally went to your friends and family. And today that still happens a lot. But there are now a lot of organized places where you can access angel funds of different kinds, whether it's online, whether it's angel groups. Philadelphia has a lot of angel groups. So if you're ever interested, you can apply to them and go present to their angel groups. So it's a pretty organized area, and the amount of dollars that have come from angel groups into startups has greatly increased. And so it's a really active source of funding for early stage companies. And then the other area that's relatively new is the crowdfunding area. And this is an area just in the last couple of years that has changed a lot, and maybe you've heard a little bit about this. Today, the way the crowdfunding market works is actually not about selling equity, but about raising money by selling the promise of a product. So for example, we have a company that's a robotics company called Jibo that is building a consumer robotics product that's not going to be on the market for a year. And so they went to Indiegogo, one of the crowdfunding sites, and pre-sold thousands of units of this robot at very high prices, and people are willing to pay to get access to early product. It's actually surprising. It surprised me. The company raised $2 million through crowdfunding sources. So it is very real. And it's also a really interesting barometer of whether, in particular if you have a product, of whether people are interested in that product. So a lot of funding sources, venture firms and others, are now looking at crowdfunding and saying, go do a crowdfunding campaign to see if people want whatever it is you're building, even if you have not built it yet. So it's been a dynamic that's kind of rapidly changing and has impacted our world. And then you get to the venture capital world and strategic funders. Most of our companies wind up with corporate investors in them alongside venture capital firms. And increasingly, corporate investors are moving a little bit earlier. So they're actually creeping down into the angel community a little bit. So sometimes, and you can think about this with your company, sometimes you can access corporate dollars, strategic dollars, earlier than you could otherwise access venture dollars. So the last thing I'll largely talk about is just kind of management and how you go about thinking about that. So, and again, in most of our companies, the faculty that develop the original research and the original insight do not wind up running the company over time. There are a few exceptions of that. Some of those have been successful, some of those have not been. And generally the reason the faculty members affiliated with our companies are staying at the university is that their area of expertise is science, not business, and so they need to team up with somebody. This is what PCI and Upstart are really focused on doing. So finding that co-founder is one of the most critical first steps to creating a fund. And one of the most important parts of that is the relationship dynamic. It is a marriage. So you need to find someone you're compatible with, you trust, and who also has good business instincts, on the theory that everybody in this room has great scientific instincts, and then you need somebody who can think about the market and the opportunity. What product do we build? How do we execute on that? Who do we hire? So the match between kind of the scientists and entrepreneurs are really, really critical. We gave some examples here of companies of ours that had really beautiful matches between the founding scientists and the entrepreneurs that have gone on to be very successful. And then kind of the last thing is kind of what it's like to be a CEO. And in most cases, I would imagine if you're thinking about a startup, you will be looking for someone to be your partner and be CEO. But sometimes we do see faculty who want to be CEO. And frankly, sometimes we wonder why it's so important. So one of the things we talk about is that being CEO is not necessarily a great job. It is hard. And there are lots of ups and downs. It's an emotional roller coaster. And it does, from our standpoint, require a very unique skill set. And down at the bottom, these are some of the things that we think are some of the critical skill sets of a CEO of an early stage company. They need to be market focused. They need to be able to understand most science can be applicable in a lot of different ways, and they need to understand how does that science map to a product that maps to a market need. And that discovery process is really hard, and you want somebody who's really good at that. Then you need to execute. You need to do things on time. When we're doing diligence on a company, one of the things we look at is, have they hit their milestones on time? Can they execute well? They need to be great at recruiting and recruiting other engineers, developers, scientists, postdocs. It's a really, really hard part of the startup world. In particular now, as startups have been more successful, recruiting is even harder. And then lastly, they need to be a great fundraiser. Because ultimately, if you can't fundraise, usually you can't expand the company to the point you want to expand into. So this is just, finding the right partner and entrepreneur is a really critical part. So with that, I will stop there, and then we can turn over to questions.
Great. I don't know if you guys just want to move your chairs around the table.
Just stay on.
Okay. Thanks. That was excellent to get both of your perspectives. And before we jump into questions, I just wanted to point out our executive director, John Swartley's in the back. He's also been at this for a long time, and feel free to jump in. And the staff from our medical school office is here. Vivian Martin, our director, Lena Schilke, and Milla, and those are kind of, if you're thinking about doing this, please go talk to them first. They can guide you, connect you with Michael and his team, and that's why we're here. So with that, I'm sure everyone has a lot of questions. I just thought I'd lead off with one, just from the faculty perspective, and it'd be great if, for both of you to weigh in on this. What's the right type of opportunity that should become a startup in terms of, how much faculty time does this take? What do you think about in terms of the technology? What's the best pathway moving forward, doing a startup versus, let's say, a license deal? So could you give some perspective on kind of how you assess these things and actually the time involved? Because I know
I'll just say that that is something definitely to point out in terms of working with us to build a company, especially in terms of Upstart. We look at it as a partnership, and so there is a time commitment. We understand that you have day jobs. Some people spend less time on the company, some people spend more. It really is up to you in terms of how involved you want to be. We love it if the faculty are extremely involved, but we also understand you have a day job. So we try to manage it. But there is an expectation that you're going to be involved in the process, and I think that's important. In terms of this stage of the technology, we have faculty that come to us with ideas, and we start there. We have faculty that come to us and they're already in clinical testing in some cases. It varies wildly. We're not going to judge based on that fact. We're going to get involved when you want to get involved, and we'll do what we can, as long as everyone has the expectation that the earlier the technology is, the harder it'll be to get it going. But in some cases, those are the ones that need our help the most. So we're happy to do what we can.
Yeah, so in some sense, I think everything has the potential to be a startup. And if you look over the last 10 years or so, the number of university startups has really blossomed for a lot of reasons. But one reason is that when you have a startup, you are in control of your own destiny. Whereas when you license a technology, you generally are not. And so we've seen more and more faculty want to be in control of your own destiny. So that's one of the early criteria I would use. Do you want to be involved? And do you want to be in control and have a say in it? Or do you just want a business relationship where you hand it off to somebody else? So that kind of that personal decision is, I think, really important. Then to me, the next question is, when is the right time for it to be a startup? Even if you have startup intentions long term, it doesn't mean you need to go create a startup today. And oftentimes we do see opportunities at our partner universities make the jump to be a formal startup a little too early when in fact they have access to grant funding in a lab and they can keep going in a lab a little bit further. So if you can delay it in a lab, sometimes it's good to do. Sometimes it's worth becoming a startup because you will get access to different kinds of grant funding. So you've got to think about your funding sources and whether or not you're better off continuing to progress the technology in the lab or formally spin it out.
Great, thanks. Questions from the audience? Vivian.
Mark, when you look at a technology, what are the criteria that you basically use to say, yes, I'm investing in this one, no, I'm not investing in this one?
Yeah. As much as we would like to make it formulaic, and so I could give you a score, an algorithm, it's not, the venture world is not formulaic, and there is a large part of our investing and any investing that's kind of intuition and gut. But the pieces that we think are objective, first and foremost, are the team. And so, on the team, we are really looking for a team that has startup experience before. It could have been unsuccessful startup experience before. So from our standpoint, a failed startup, you actually learn more than a successful startup. In success, you think you know what you're doing. In failure, you know what you don't know. And so we want startup experience. Ideally, it would be a mix of success and failure among the team. So that's the first thing that we really look at. As I said, the second, we want there to be really kind of big science involved. We want it to be protectable from an IP standpoint, and we do want it to open up a large market opportunity. And how we would define a large market opportunity is depending on how much capital is involved. Usually it's a multi-billion-dollar kind of opportunity long term. So we're aspiring to have our companies be worth $1 billion when we exit. So to do that, you need the total opportunity to be kind of multi-billion dollars. And then the last thing I would say is we, at Osage University Partners, because we have partnerships with universities, we see these opportunities from a very early stage before they're generally even raising money. So one of the things we do look at is whether the company has delivered on what it said from the beginning. So we're very kind of meticulous about that. What did you say you were going to do in the next 12 months? Did you do it as a sign of whether it's a team that can execute and whether the market's really responding to what they do?
Yes.
Question for you guys. Can you explain the logic between Penn getting 49% of the company, starting company, when you don't know if it's a $10 million company or a $1 billion company, for you guys to get a 49% cut from the get-go, when you guys are not putting in any investment on your own? So where's the logic in getting 49% from the beginning? And the second when there is an investment coming in, are your shares somehow protected from dilution?
Sure. I'll answer the second question first. No, they're not. They're not protected. What we're doing is building a company with you, and we're providing a lot of qualitative services that maybe don't have necessarily a defined value proposition. But if you look at what we do, you can see the value that we're providing. Just even if you said nothing else we do but providing you a template legal library so you don't need to engage an attorney, can mount to anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 in the first year of a startup company. From setting up the LLC agreement, getting the company formed, to putting the management agreement in place, to getting it all structured. That alone has a direct dollar value that we're putting into it from that standpoint. But the real proposition that we offer is being able to find the management team and putting them into the company, working with you to develop the strategy for the business, bringing all these resources together to help build it. If that value proposition and looking what we can do over the first year of a company isn't of value to you, certainly don't do it. As I said, we've got another program that's basically a starter manual and you do it yourself, or you're free to start a company on your own. And that's all absolutely fine. You can do any of that. This program in Upstart is for people that look at the concept of starting a company and say, I wish I had the time to do that. I wish I had the resources. I wish I understood what it takes to be able to do that. I just don't, and I'm not going to do it. And those people then end up having ideas and technologies that don't reach the market, and they could if they just had that help. And those are the people that we're looking to support and move forward. And it's been an extremely popular option, for people to get involved. And as I said, we start 2 of these a month. And that it continues to be something people want to do. This is what we want to do, and we want everyone, when they enter Upstart, to understand the value proposition day one and endorse it and accept it and want that. If you don't see the value proposition in what we're offering and you think that you can do this without us, by all means, do that.
But, sorry to jump in, but whether you choose Upstart or another option, you still work with PCI to kind of facilitate that, to make sure it kind of meets all the Penn criteria for how to do that well.
Which is important to note that any company that comes to Penn for a license can't be majority owned by a faculty member. So with an Upstart company, typically when you come for the license, we find the manager, we put them in place, we work with the manager to negotiate a license. At that point, the faculty member typically owns about 41% of the company. If you do this on your own and you come to Penn for a license, you have to own less than 50% of the company. So if you do this on your own, you're going to own 49 to 50% of the company. Do it Upstart, you're going to own 41%. If what we're doing isn't worth 8% of the company, please look elsewhere. I certainly don't want to waste your time or ours. And that's the way we look at it in terms of how we do this. This program is designed to work within the policies of Penn. In terms of conflict of interest, we manage that for you. We help the Conflict of Interest Committee understand what is the company and how it's being developed. So we're in constant contact with them and talk to them about the process. So if you tell them I have interest in a company, they call us and say, is this an Upstart company? How does it work? And we tell them. So that's another value proposition that we had. There's a lot to this support structure that we're providing in the program.
Other questions? John?
I have a question. It's going to be a little loaded for Mike later. Mark, you mentioned that we're not came from Palo Alto in terms of I would assume you're kind of referencing the venture community and the ease of startup creation and why some of those institutions in those places don't have quite as robust startup infrastructure that they have at the university level. And I totally agree with that. You also said that you thought that might be kind of shifting in the next 5 years. Can you go into a little bit more detail as to what that means to you? And then I kind of want Michael to reflect on how that might affect his practice.
Yeah, for us, the starting point is what makes a successful kind of university-oriented entrepreneurial ecosystem that looks like what does exist in Stanford or in Palo Alto. And from my standpoint, it's truly a multivariable equation where there are a lot of inputs, and you can't say it's just about capital or it's just about management. There are a bunch of different things in those places that have come together to make that a thriving university-oriented entrepreneurial ecosystem, that we think Philly is kind of moving in that direction. So, here are the different pieces of it. First is culture, kind of the orientation around startups, where it's cool to create a startup. It's fun to, people want to, it's a job people aspire to. And if you look at what's happening, largely kind of around the younger generation in Philadelphia, that is happening today. And I've been in Philadelphia since 2006. From my standpoint, it did not really exist in 2006. You can see a sea change among the startup orientation within the city of Philadelphia. Second, you need that same entrepreneurial orientation to exist within the universities themselves that are in those ecosystems. And again, I think that's changing. Penn is investing a lot of dollars and people around startups and is talking about it a lot, as are Drexel, Temple. The whole environment really is changing. And in some sense, I would say that the universities in Philly are playing catch up to universities elsewhere, but they are catching up, and they're really interested in doing that. So you've got the culture, you've got the universities, and then ultimately you need the talent and kind of the talent pool. And that is one of the things that takes time. And in particular, to really develop a talent pool, you need people to have gone through multiple startups. And some succeed and some fail. And if when I first moved to Philadelphia, I went and looked at the successful startups and where the alumni of those companies had gone, hoping they would start new ones. And the reality is, 10 years ago, the senior managers of successful startups had stayed with those companies even after they were acquired. You didn't see as much kind of rotation among kind of from startup to startup as you see elsewhere. And that, again, I think is starting to change. We have more startups now that are funded in Philly. Some of those are going to be successful, some have been, some are not. And so you're going to see an increasing kind of veteran crop of entrepreneurs, the kind of people that Michael's talking through Upstart. So I think the quality of the entrepreneurs here is improving. All of those are moving in the right direction, it just takes time.
So just to quickly address John's really us, I think from what Mark said and what John said is absolutely true. We exist and Upstart exists because the University of Pennsylvania needs it, because Philadelphia needs it, the Delaware Valley needs it. I could see a day that as the ecosystem around Penn improves and faculty have, let's say, investors walking the hallway, which literally does happen in Stanford and not necessarily happens here. And in those situations, there'll be less demand, and eventually maybe our programs dwindle away if the demand's not there. I would want nothing better than that for Philadelphia, because that is so important for us to be able to offer that same level of ecosystem that places like Boston and San Francisco have. That's where we want to get to, and that's where I hope that we're going.
Yes?
If I could just have to make a little comment. I'm actually, I have a startup. I'm a physician here. I have a startup. I've gone through the experience of what it's like to create a startup as a faculty member at Penn. So one of the things that I want to convey to you guys, I think these are great programs. But as a faculty member who has gone through this process, I hope you guys can relate back to the university that there needs to be greater support for physicians that wants to be entrepreneurial. And I'm telling you this because I'm in a situation right now where I'm forced to resign because the university won't accept me as a physician entrepreneur. So